Hi guys, and today we will be looking at a Bachmann locomotive exclusively made for rails of Sheffield, and that is the Caledonian Railway 812 class. And this one here is number 57565, and it's in the BR early emblem, and it's medium weathered or lightly weathered depending on your preference. I'll go with a medium, so it's near the end of its life. This model does come with a note warning you if you want to DCC fit it. It's been upgraded from a 21 pin to a next 18. So if you want to do like sound and stuff and all the rest, and not analog, that's what you need. You need a next 18 decoder, and they tell you where to get it from and all the rest. And the product code has changed as well. We have it now 35-282Z. Like I said, this is exclusively for rails by Bachmann, and it's BR1. It's quite nice. This cost me £170 with a £30 deposit, so £140 when you paid the deposit and all the good stuff. So yeah, let's get into it and see if it's worth the money that we pay for it, shall we? So here goes. As we start off at the detail bag you get with this Bachmann locomotive, as always with the Bachmann ones, there's quite a lot to add in detail terms. You do get some lamps for the locomotive. They are in white or cream. You also get the doors for the cab or the tender to add yourself. You also get the hook and chain links as well, go on the front, and some steam pipes or vacuum pipes to add yourself, and a few other bits of piping and details to add. It is quite a bit. That's the way Bachmann does it. As we move on to the front of the locomotive now, this being a modern day locomotive, it does have metal sprung buffers. It's a modern touch there from Bachmann. The buff beam and housing is in red with a few rivets, and they are lightly weathered along with the buffers as well. We do have a weathered NEM coupling as well, where they are there, and there's a few irons and oxyfuff off the tracks underneath. On the buff beam we also have some holes for the details that are in the detail back as well. Moving on up, we do have at least 3 lamp irons. They're weathered as well. We also have some sort of taps on the locomotive to let, I think, water out or pressure. They are there as well. There's a few clips for the door to stay in place. We also have the submarine style dart that the Caledonian Railway use quite often. Then we have cleanly applied. We also have the number of the locomotive, which is 57565. Then we have a handrail and a lamp iron at the top. We also have a shed code, and if I got this correct, the shed code should be 64C Dairy Road. I think it's a Scottish shed, but that's what it should be if I've got this correct. And we have some bracing and hinges as well on the door as well, which haven't been picked out. They're just weathered and black. And then we have the chimney at the top. As we move on to the side of the locomotive now, there is some differences to the side of the locomotive. The other side doesn't have the steam pipe or the reverser like you have around here. As you can see, we have a reversing rod which is weathered, it's black and it's metal. That is there. We also have a steam pipe as well that goes from the cab all the way to near the chimney. That is separately applied, I think, and that is there next to the handrail, as you can see, and a few washout plugs as well. The only 2 differences, failing that, we do have the wheel configuration, which is an 060, and all the wheels seem to be weathered and the axles seem to be covered up. The rod in the centre is metal, which you expect from a Bachmann locomotive. We also have some steps as well, just past the front driving wheels and at the cab. We have a few splashes as well dotted around, and a few points of sanding as well and oiling. If we look between the boiler and the frames, we do have some sort of mechanism there, slightly weathered, but it is in red, and we do have an air gap as well through the boiler and the chassis. And if you look carefully, you can see some weathering effect going on. It's meant to be a medium weathering effect from Bachmann. As we move along now and to the livery of this locomotive, like I said, this is BR Black one, and it looks a totally different livery compared to the Caledonian Railway again. Like I said, this is a weathered version with no lining whatsoever on it. It's just a worn out black BR Black. It looks quite nice actually. As we move along to the cab now does have the number of the locomotive, which does seem to be clean, and it is 57565. We also have, which I think is a classification, which I think is 4F. Then we have a small handrail, and then we have a lamp in place at the top as well. And there is a handrail going up the side of the cab for the crew too, with the step. As we move on to the part most people look forward to in a steam locomotive review, and that is the cab detail. This cab does have a wood flooring effect. It also has a hole in the firebox. The dials do have numbers on, and the water gauge does have a water type in it as well. The piping is coloured in as well. We do have glazing in the cab. I think it's flush, I've got this correct. And there's a handrail dotted around as well for the crew. This model does have a glow on DCC ready. The red glow is quite bright actually. It's a nice touch from Bachmann to add that. As we move on to the front of the tender now. The front of the tender is a little bit weathered as well. We do have a chute for the coal. There's a few places for the fireman to go and put his tools and get stuff out. There's a toolbox as well and a few cupboards. As we move on to the side of the tender now. The side of the tender is BR black and it is weathered lightly as well, or medium depending on your preference. And we do have the crisply applied, slightly weathered BR early crest in the centre of the tender. It's quite a small version of the BR early crest, which is nice. We also have some handrails dotted around too. As we move on down to the axles and stuff like that, the springs, they are all crisply moulded and they are weathered as well. The wheels, like I said, are metal. We do have a pipe underneath the tender, which is a great touch from Bachmann to add that. I don't think I've seen it before. And we also have some steps as well. As we move on to the back of the tender now. The back of the tender again is weathered. The buffer beams are weathered as well. The buffer beam and housing is in red with a few rivets. The buffers themselves are black, weathered, and they are sprung as well in metal. We do have a small NAM coupling as well. We have at least 2 holes on there to add details from the detail bag. As we move on up, we do have 3 lamp irons on the buffer beam. We also have them weathered, and there's one at either end and one just off the centre too. We also have some handrails. We have, looks like 2 steps or a step either side. And then as we get to the top, we have another lamp iron as well. Very basic tender, this one. As we do an aerial view now on top of the tender. On top of the tender, you do get 2 water filler caps by the looks of it, and then you get like some sort of bracing wall there too. It's slightly weathered to go with the rest of the locomotive, and it is in black. The coal load on this locomotive is removable and it is die cast, which is quite nice. It's very shiny, but it's quite nice. Once you remove the coal load, there's no rivets or anything in there. It's just a plain black, slightly weathered chute. And then you have the toolbox as well. It doesn't look too bad with the coal load, if I'm honest with you. As we move on to top of the locomotive now. Starting in the usual place, which is the cab roof. The cab roof is in black. Does have a few rivets as well dotted around. It's quite a lot actually dotted around. There's no rain ducky or anything on here. As you move across slightly, we do have the safety valves and whistles. The whistle, yes, is plastic, and the safety valves are metal. And there is some weathering going on there with some rust effect going on. Looks quite nice actually for a weathered locomotive. Moving along to the boiler area. The boiler area itself, you can, closely enough, you can see where the lines should be if this was going to be a lined locomotive. You can see them at least. There's a few washout plugs as well. Looks like we have a separately applied dome. It's quite a tall dome. And we also have a separately applied chimney. I'm not sure if you can add a smoke generator or anything in this one or not. And then we have the handrails and the buffers too. As we do an underneath look at this locomotive now, it does have a small NAM coupling, slightly weathered. We also have some piping under the locomotive on one side, I think, or it could be both sides, but at least we have some piping and that is weathered as well. The wheels again are metal, and they do have, which looks like all wheel pickups, and it's just a copper strip, which is fantastic. We also have some sanding parts and brake shoes and all the rest down here. The brake rigging is already applied as well. We have a couple of screws to take off the base plate. And if I've got this correct, the base plate is hardwired, but I could be wrong. And then we have the steps near the cab too. And finally, as we move on to the Loco and Tender connection. The Loco and Tender connection is the old-fashioned, slightly modified style Bachmann way to do it, which is a metal strip going across and a little stump on the tender which isn't permanently screwed in. You have to be careful. And this time we have 2 wires going in instead of 4, and the plug is halfway in the tender, which isn't great, but it's there. You can just see about 2 wires. It's been slightly modified, but that's how it is. Moving on to the tender itself. The tender itself does have the brake rigging already applied, which again is great. We do have slightly weathered metal wheels as well. We have pickups on 4 wheels. which is the front tube and the back tube. And they are in a split chassis sort of design, as I want to call it. The axle in the centre is plastic on all of the tender wheels, and then we have two metal wheels at each end, and that gets the pickups going. That's how Bachmann have done it. Sorry if that was a bit of a ramble to explain, but I did the best I could. And we have that piping on tender as well. At the end we also have a small tension lock coupling and sprung buffers as well. So yeah guys, next up will be the usual points and second radius test. Like I said before, some of my Bachmann ones struggle with second radius and Hornby's track set points and all the rest, so let's see if this one can manage it, shall we? What's that? 19? Not too bad for a DC ready model, and it's got a coreless motor in. Bit of a squeak, but it's quite nice. It runs quite well. So yeah, it managed that pretty well for a Bachmann locomotive. Quite smooth as well. This does have a coreless motor in it. Next up will be some slow speed, and we'll wind it a train, and I'll see you at the end. So here goes. Again, 19, it's not too bad. The weathering does look quite nice. Not too bad, that's quite smooth actually. So yeah guys, that's the end of the running session. Before I give you my opinion, I'll show you what it ran with like I usually do. And that is just a random mix of freight. All sorts there from different manufacturers. I don't know if it was something it would pull, but it is a 3F. I know many of you think it's a 4F, but I think it's a 3F. The overall locomotive for me, I think it's 175 or 170. Take away the £30 deposit, so once you pay your £30, then when it arrives, you pay the rest, which, you know, is 140, I think, if my maths are correct. 170 for Bachmann 060 is okay price, especially in today's world. It's an okay price. Okay, it's not as cheap as Oxford Rail with their J26 and 27, which are £100, but it's not expensive as it would be if it was the pre-grouping livery, which is £200. But for me, it looks the part, it's fantastic. It's another pre-grouping locomotive. As an LNER fan, I am slightly jealous how nice this one is. Runs it's perfectly fine. You could probably have a double head with other 060's LMS locomotives or any company you've got. There's a few issues that mine had, if I'm honest with you. And one was the whistle. You might have seen in a few photos, the whistle of mine was bent because it's plastic. I think I've possibly straightened that out now, but just be wary if you ever buy one of these. And the second one was the front coupling was drooped. It wasn't pushed in all the way, it was drooping, and it went over points and it would stop or derail because how far down it was. They're the only two issues I've had with the model, but failing that, they're easily fixed. You just push one back in and you slightly bend the other. But failing that, it's not too bad. The weathering for me is fantastic. It does look a little bit odd on my model railway, or whatever you want to call it. It does look a little odd. Someone with a higher detailed layout would look fantastic. It's my opinion, really. Would I recommend these? Yeah, I think I would at the right price. They're like 170 is probably borderline, but it's quite a basic livery. The pre-grouping one is really up to you. It depends how much you're into your pre-grouping or you want something unusual. The prices are Bachmann prices. Like I said, the C-Class is going for £200. I'm a big fan of these. I'm glad I've got two different sorts. I've got this one and as built. So it's a thumbs up from me. So anyway guys, hopefully I'll see you in the next review. Please take care and goodbye.